All right, let's get right into it. If you've been paying any attention to the AI space lately, you've probably heard the whispers, the leaks, about a top-secret project at OpenAI. And it's got a pretty weird code name, Garlic. Now, this isn't just another incremental update. Everything we're hearing suggests this is a deliberate, tactical move meant to completely shake up the entire AI landscape. So today, we're going to crack open these leaks and figure out what GPT 5.3, or Garlic, is really all about.
So, to really understand Garlic, you have to go back to late 2025. This is when multiple sources reported that Sam Altman himself declared an internal code red at OpenAI. And look, this wasn't some routine fire drill. This was a full-blown strategic emergency. It meant they felt their entire market position was under serious threat. Think about that for a second. For the first time since ChatGPT basically took over the world, OpenAI was actually on the defensive. The big question is, why? What could possibly have them so rattled?
Well, it turns out the pressure was coming from two very specific directions. First, you had Google's Gemini 3 just absolutely crushing it in all the multimodal benchmarks. We're talking video, audio, image processing, you name it, Gemini was on top. But then, and this might have been the bigger problem, you had Anthropic's Claude 4.5. Claude was quietly becoming the darling of the developer community. People loved it for its reliability, for its clean code. It was winning what the slide calls the developer's soul. So OpenAI was suddenly losing ground in the exact areas that matter most for long-term growth.
And that's where Garlic comes in. The code red wasn't just about sounding the alarm. It came with a clear directive. The order was basically, drop everything else. All non-essential projects, paused. The one and only focus was to build a model that could win back those developers and snatch back the performance crown. This mission, this counteroffensive, became Project Garlic. And it wasn't about following the old playbook. The whole strategy shifted. The goal was no longer about building a bigger model, it was about building a smarter one.
So what does smarter, not bigger actually mean? Well, it all comes down to this core concept the leaks keep mentioning, cognitive density. Think of it like this. Instead of just throwing trillions more parameters at the problem, the brute force approach, the idea was to make every single existing parameter work harder, to pack more intelligence into the same amount of space. And how do you do that? The key, according to insiders, is a new technique. It's about training the model on much smaller but incredibly high-quality curated datasets. So instead of scraping the entire messy internet, they're feeding it things like verified code from major open source projects and peer-reviewed academic papers. It's pure quality over quantity. And the theory is it builds a model with fundamentally better reasoning from the ground up.
You know, there was this one quote from an internal document that just perfectly sums up this whole shift in thinking. It said, "The bodybuilder era of AI is over. The gymnast era has begun." I mean, what a great way to put it, right? For years, AI development has been all about being the bodybuilder, just piling on more muscle, more parameters, more raw power. But Garlic is supposed to be the gymnast. It's agile, it's efficient, it's precise. It can do things with an elegance and an efficiency that the hulking bodybuilder just can't match.
And if you dig a little deeper into the project's history, the leak suggests that Garlic wasn't even a single project to begin with. It was actually born from smashing two different internal projects together. On one hand, you had Shallotpeat. Yeah, they loved their food code names, which was basically a safe, stable update focused on bug fixes, the reliable workhorse. On the other hand, you had the real Garlic project, which was this super experimental, kind of risky research into model compression. The code red forced them to combine the two. The thinking was, let's take the stability of Shallotpeat and inject it with the game-changing efficiency of Garlic. The goal was insane. Achieve what they were thinking of as GPT 6 level reasoning, but do it in a package that was way smaller and faster.
Okay, so that's the strategy, the why behind it all. But what about the what? What can this thing actually do? This is where the leaks get really interesting, because they've been incredibly specific. They paint a picture of a model that's tailor-made to fix the biggest headaches for developers and heavy users. So let's get into the specifics. Let's decode what the evidence is telling us.
First up, the big, flashy number everyone's talking about, a rumored 400,000 token context window. Now, just to put that in perspective, that is absolutely massive. We're talking about the ability to feed it an entire code base or a huge stack of research papers all in one go. But here's the thing, that giant number, it's not even the most important part of the story. The real game changer is a feature insiders are calling perfect recall. See, here's a dirty secret about other models with huge context windows. They tend to get forgetful. They suffer from this problem where they lose track of information that's buried deep in the middle of a long prompt. It's like they only remember the beginning and the end. Garlic is supposedly engineered to eliminate that problem entirely. We're talking about near-perfect reliability in finding that one tiny detail, that needle in the haystack, no matter how much text you throw at it.
And it's not just about what you can put in. It's also about what you can get out. The rumored maximum output is a staggering 128,000 tokens. For anyone who's ever had to type continue over and over again, you know this is a huge deal. It means the model could potentially write an entire software application, or a massive detailed report, maybe even a novel, in one single coherent response. That's a fundamental change in how we'd use these tools.
Okay, let's look under the hood, because the leaks point to a completely new engine running this thing. They're talking about 4 new core logic features. First, something called auto-rooted reasoning. This basically means it has 2 gears, a fast, almost reflexive mode for easy questions, and a slower, deep-thinking mode for when it needs to solve a really complex problem. Second, native tool calling. This is huge for developers. It means the model can interact with other software and APIs directly and reliably, without all the clunky code that's needed now. Third is self-verification. Before it gives you an answer, it apparently double-checks its own logic for contradictions or errors. And finally, maybe the most important one, epistemic humility. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. The model is trained to know the limits of its own knowledge. It knows what it doesn't know. And that could be the secret sauce to finally reining in AI hallucinations.
So all these new features sound incredible on paper, right? But how does Garlic actually perform against the competition? At the end of the day, that's what matters, and the leaked benchmarks are really the source of all this hype. They seem to suggest that OpenAI's big code red gamble is about to pay off big time. Let's look at the numbers. On HumanFL+, which is basically the gold standard for testing how well an AI can code, Garlic is reportedly hitting a 94.2%. That puts it comfortably ahead of both Claude and Gemini. Then you look at reasoning on a test called GDP-Val, and it's supposedly scoring almost 71%. I mean, that's not just a step up, that is a massive leap over its rivals. Remember the 2 areas they were worried about, coding and reasoning? These numbers show a direct and apparently very successful attack on those weaknesses.
I mean, just look at this chart of the coding scores. This visualization says it all. This isn't a small incremental gain. This is a targeted strike. Anthropic's entire reputation with developers was built on Claude being the best for coding. This score, if it's real, is a direct challenge to their biggest strength. If these numbers are even close to accurate, you could see the developer community swing back to OpenAI practically overnight.
Okay, let's pull back for a second and look at the big picture. Let's just assume for a moment that all of these leaks are true. What does the release of a model like Garlic actually mean for the entire AI landscape going into 2026? Because we're not just talking about another product launch here. This really could be a fundamental shift in how everything works.
You can really break down the potential impact into 3 main areas. First, for developers, this whole cognitive density thing, this efficiency, could translate directly to cheaper and faster APIs, and it could finally give us tools that feel like truly autonomous coding partners. Second, for the market, this could be the move that reverses all the gains Google and Anthropic made, causing a massive power shift right back to OpenAI. But the third one is the biggest, for the entire industry. This could signal the end of the brute force era. The race might stop being about who can build the biggest, most expensive model and start being about who can deliver the most intelligence for the lowest cost. That changes everything.
So, the million-dollar question, when can we actually use this thing? Well, the consensus from the most credible leakers points to a seriously aggressive timeline, no doubt sped up by that code red. They're talking about a preview for select partners and ChatGPT Pro users maybe as early as late January 2026, then a full API release for all developers in February. And possibly, they might even push it to the free tier by March to put maximum pressure on the competition.
Now we have to take a step back and pour a little cold water on all this excitement. We need to balance the hype with a dose of reality. The reasons to believe all this are pretty compelling, right? The leaks are coming from good sources, the whole code red story provides a clear motive, and there are even whispers of developers seeing Garlic show up in internal logs. But, on the other hand, let's be real. OpenAI hasn't confirmed a single word of this. None of these benchmarks are public, and we can't rule out the possibility that this is all just an incredibly smart, incredibly effective marketing ploy designed to make their competitors panic.
And all of this leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Look, if GPT 5.3, if Garlic, delivers on even half of what's been promised, it's going to be an absolutely massive release. But the really interesting question is, what happens after? Is Garlic the model that finally puts an end to this crazy AI arms race? Or is it the one that just redraws the map and completely redefines the entire battlefield for the next 5 years?
I guess we're all going to find out very, very soon.